Okay, I'll help you understand first origin, then same origin policy, then cross origin, and then cross origin resource sharing. So the first term that you need to understand is origin. In the real life, the term origin means from where anything is starting. For example, take example of river Ganga. In English, we call it river Ganges. In Hindi, we call it river Ganga. River Ganga is the river and the place where it originates, let's say the Himalayas. So for river Ganga, the origin is the Himalayas because from the Himalayas, river Ganga is originating, it is initiating. So the place where the river is originating, it is initiating, that is what we call as the origin. In web application as well, we have HTTP request. So the domain from which the HTTP request initiates is known as origin. That is origin. Origin means from where did this HTTP request originate? From where did this HTTP request initiate? That is origin. The next term that we have here is same origin policy. It means that when any of the user is trying to access any of the resource, is the resource being accessed by the same origin, or is it any of the cross origin that has requested for this resource? So by setting up the same origin policy, we can set rules in the browser. The browser will be checking this policy, whether same origin policy is being followed or not, or this policy is being violated. Now, please understand that a web browser, like a computer, simply understands yes and no, 0, 1, true, false. Simple. So, for us to be able to decide whether same origin policy is being followed or not, we need to tell it to the browser that this is what we mean by same origin policy. This is what you have to test. So, for example, you have got two domains, rohanwebsite.in and rohanwebsite.in. According to you, are both of these same origins or not? You can write yes in the chat box, or you can react with thumbs up in the meeting to say yes, that yes, both of these two are same origins. One, two people have said yes, three people have said yes. What about others? Four yes, five yes, six yes. Okay, so according to six people, at least six people, these two are same origins. Now, why did you tell them as same origins? Because their domain name is different. All right, let's take this a step forward. This is HTTPS and this is FTP. Now, are the same origin? Yes or no? Same. If you think yes, thumbs up or write yes in the chat box. Are the same origin? One yes, one no. Two yes, one no. Same origin or not? Yes. Okay. Three yeses, one no. Four yeses, one no. Okay. So the next thing that has changed is the protocol. And taking it one more step forward, things are about to get interesting for all of you. Now, are the same origin or not? One no, two no's, two yeses, two yes and two no. Others, one of the participant mentioned no clue. No problem. Another one says yes. Okay, so the third thing that we will be checking at is the port number. Now, The reason why I explicitly chose to discuss CORS and SOP today is most of the people believe that SOP is only related to domain name. That if the domain names are same, it is same origin policy. Practically, it is okay. It is true. But technically, on paper, theoretically, for the browsers, for any of the two domains to be considered as same origins, all of the three things, domain names, protocol, and port number, all three of them should be same, then only it will be considered as same origin. Otherwise, same origin is violated. Please keep this thing in mind. Very important interview question. Whenever I lead any of the interview, I take any interview and they mention, the interviewer mentions that I know what is SOP, I know what is CORS. I immediately ask them the same thing that I mentioned. I write down a domain name, a couple of domains, and then I ask them yes, no. Then protocol, yes, no. Then port number, yes, no. And majority of the people, 90% of the people do the same mistake as some of the participants have done in today's discussion. For any of the two origins to be considered as same origin, all these three things should be same: the domain name, the protocol, and the port number. Another exception here was that for Internet Explorer, as we have discussed it already, that for browsers, SOP is tested by browsers. Servers have no role to play in SOP. They just set that SOP is set. In browsers, will be testing whether SOP is being followed or not. So browsers will be testing the domain name, then the protocol, and then the port number. Internet Explorer was one of the exceptional browsers that did not consider port number. Now that is not a challenge anymore, considering the fact that Internet Explorer has now been deprecated. But previously, Internet Explorer only considered domain name and protocol, whereas till date, all of the other browsers, Opera, Safari, Mozilla, Google Chrome, Chromium, Brave, all of the other browsers that we have, they require all of the three things to be same: domain name, protocol, and port number. When all three of them are same, you call them same origin. When any one of them is different, you consider it to be cross origin. Simple. So when you say cross origin, you are referring that there is one of the domains that is requesting for a resource that uh, it wants to access. Now, whether will it be able to access that resource or not, that is what we will see. So for cross origin, keep these things in mind. For any of the two origins, when all three of them are same origin, when any one of them is different, it is cross origin. So what happens in cross origin resource sharing? Let's say you are at the hacktivist.in and you want to access a response or a resource from Rohan website.in. So now what will happen? The developers of Rohan website.in, they will be going ahead and they will be setting up a few HTTP headers like access control allow origin, access control allow origin, access control allowed methods, access control allowed headers, access control allowed credentials, access control allowed origin. At the moment, pay attention only to credentials and origin. The other ones that you have, you may ignore them for a moment. For now, pay attention only to these two. I will be getting to the other couple of them in some time. Access control allow origin and access control allow credentials here. So when you say access control allowed origin, it means that all of those origins that are allowed by the developers, by the organization, by the origin to be able to access the resource. For example, our scenario is that the hacktivist.in wants to access the resources of Rohan website.in. So what will happen at the server of Rohan website.in? The developers will be setting access control allowed origin to the hacktivist.in, like this. So now what does this mean? It means that whenever any of the requests that will be coming to Rohan website.in, wherein in the origin the hacktivist.in is written, it will be allowed to read the response. So for it will be very helpful for you as a developer in scenarios wherein you have to share the data across your partner companies, across your sister companies. For example, maybe Facebook and WhatsApp, both of them fall under the same parent company Meta. So if Facebook wants to share data with WhatsApp.com with the help of cross-origin resource sharing, easily will be able to do it. Or you have implemented any of the CRM, or you have got any of the user analytics vendor onboarded that will be helping you in understanding the behavior of the application, of the users of the application. So in that situation, if you allow the vendor APIs for the cross-origin resource sharing, they will be able to help you very well, beautifully shown insights, visualizations on how your users are behaving on your application. So in those scenarios, when you would want to share your data explicitly, you would want the other origins to access your data. You want to share your resources, responses with them. It will be coming very handy. So access control allow origins will be helping you as a developer and as an organization to share the responses across other origins, other domains. The next part that we have is access control allowed credentials. Majority of us leave credentials here as per username and password. In this case, COIS credentials here refers to the session token, like you have a JWT or you have a session key. All of those will be falling under credentials. The possible values of access control allowed credentials are boolean. It can either be true or it can either be false. It means that when access control allowed credentials is set to true, in that situation, the requesting origin in our situation, it is the hacktivist.in will be able to also read the session tokens like user session key and JWT. So access control allowed credentials, when you set it to true, you will be able to read the things. This you cannot set at the hacktivist.in. This will also be set at the server of Rohan website.in. When you set it to true for the hacktivist.in, any of the requests wherein the origin header is set to the hacktivist.in, it will be able to read the session tokens as well. Why is it required? It is subject to the scenario. All of us are here passionate about cybersecurity, about user security. We would be thinking that Rohan, why would anyone be setting it to true? But in practical scenarios, when you have to share some of the sensitive information or you have to share some of the information, these types of tokens are required to be shared. So for that reason, it can be set to true and false. Then the next term that you have here is methods. Methods here refers to HTTP methods: get, post, put, trace, delete options. Which of the HTTP methods are allowed to initiate a cross-origin resource sharing that is mentioned here? Like here, it will mention get, head. So when it is mentioned like this, only those requests that are coming with HTTP method get or HTTP method head, only they will be allowed to initiate a CURS request. Others will not be. And the next term here that we have is headers. Again, HTTP headers. What all HTTP headers are required in the request so that CURS can be performed, they will be mentioned here. Now, what you have to do when in any of the application, like you open Rohan website.in, and there I ask you to test for CORS. the first thing that you should be doing is you should be finding out all of those endpoints that are showing you any of the sensitive data. For example, this is one of the applications, and on this applications, while performing reconnaissance, while performing information gathering, I came to know that here, this is one of the endpoints that is responding with this JSON response. Now assume here that we are having, some of the sensitive data here. So what we need to do, we need to test for CORS here, whether cross origin resource sharing is happening here or not. So for that, what we do, we will be first of all intercepting this request in Bub Suite. I will be opening my Bub Suite here, proxy interception, how to use Bub Suite, all of the default tabs in Bub Suite. We will already be discussing this in the training, and intercept is on. I'll hit refresh, and here you can see the request has been intercepted. We are making this request. This is the domain, this is the endpoint, this is the HTTP method. These two lines are mandatory in any of the HTTP request. This is the HTTP method, get, post, put, trace, delete options, any of the HTTP method. Then this will be the resource that you would want to request. This will be the HTTP version, and this is the host header, that where should this request be going. Apart from this, all of the other headers that you have, they are optional. Not only on this domain, according to the rule set for HTTP, all of the other headers are optional. These first two lines, these are mandatory. Now what we'll do, I'll right click and then I'll send it to repeater. Repeater is the tab in Burp Suite where you will be able to see the request as well as the response for that request in the same frame. So here what I do, in this request, I will be adding another HTTP header, that is origin. And here, let's say I write bing.com and then I click on send. So when I write this line, what it means is that the request to this resource has been initiated by bing.com. Back to the example that we had discussed, River Ganga originating at the Himalayas. So the origin is the Himalayas. Here, when you write origin bing.com, it means that this request was initiated originally by bing.com. And that is why you see here in access control allow origin, it says bing.com. It means that in this particular endpoint, sock.js/info, when the request is coming from bing.com, it is allowed to share the resources with bing.com. All of this response that you see here, it is allowed to be read by bing.com. If in case it would have contained any of the personal information of the user, if it would have contained any of the API key related to the user, then things could have gone a bit troublesome for this organization, because private information, sensitive information, critical information by the users can be read by other domains. So when you write any of the domain here, instead of Bing, you can write any other domain as well. And if the same domain is reflected here in access control allow origin, it means that this origin is allowed to access this response. Next thing you check is access control allow credentials set to true. It means that if bing.com wants to read the session tokens, it wants to read the session keys, JWTs, or any of the other things that are related to the credentials, it can read that as well. So as I mentioned, access control allow credentials can be true or false. Here it is set to true. Whenever you have to report it, you simply take a screenshot of this from here to here, and then you set it to the developer that origin has been set to asterisk. Now there are two possible values that we have for this one, for access control allow origin. Access control allow origin, read this as access control allow origin. It can either be set to asterisk. Asterisk here is the wildcard, which means all. Just as you have got wildcard in SQL, select asterisk from users. Asterisk means all the columns. So here also asterisk means all of the origins which want to access the response can do that. Because in the server of our target application, ACAO, that is access control allow origin, has been set to asterisk. For that reason, all of the origins are allowed. Another thing that can happen here is that access control allow origin can be set to null, which means that when the origin is set to null, when the requesting origin is null, then only cross origin resource sharing will happen. Most of the developers believe that setting access control allow origin to null safeguards them from cross origin resource sharing attack, but that is not the case. We even have an exploit for this one. And the third possible value is the hard coded value, that only those domains, only those origins that you want to allow, you mention them here, and all of the other domains, they will automatically be disallowed. Simple. So here in this target application, because access control allow origin has been set to asterisk, any of the domain that you write here is allowed to read the response. For you to be able to report it as a bug hunter or as a pen tester, a screenshot of this by highlighting this and highlighting this is enough. But still, if in case you would want to have a look at its exploit, you can go to my GitHub account, you go to bug bounty word list, you go to exploits and POC, and here you will be able to find, I'll turn off the intercept, and here you will be able to find the exploit. Rohan's CURS exploit.html. Here you will be able to find the exploit. I'll simply show it to you here. So all you have to do is on the application on which you want to exploit, you simply take its URL and put it here. I'll show it to you here. I'll open it for you here, and then I'll show you the code. Here you can see the page source. So now what we are doing here is, with the help of this JavaScript, we are initiating a XHR. XHR here is short for XML HTTP request. So to this domain, to this endpoint, we are initiating the XHR, and whatever response we will be getting for making a request to this endpoint, we will be seeing that in the alert box. So I click on click me to exploit, and here you can see that in the alert box, you have WebSockets, origin, cookie needed, entropy. And here in this response as well, if you see WebSockets, origin, cookie needed, entropy. This is the exploit. What actual attackers will be doing is, whenever they have to exploit this, they will be, simply writing this JavaScript in a HTML page. That HTML page will either be sent to the user or it will be added as a part of the, original HTML page. And then in that HTML page, this XHR will also be there. This JavaScript will be there, and with the help of the JavaScript, cross origin resources, a cross origin request will be initiated and cross origin resource attack will be happening. So when all of the origins are allowed, you will be using this exploit. When only null origins are allowed, you will be using this exploit. Again, it is also available in the public domain. I have written this exploit and I have put this here on my GitHub account for everyone's reference. I'll again send the link to this repository for you for your reference here in the chat box. I have sent it. So here you will be able to see Rohan's CORS POC for null origin allowed. This is what you have to do when only the null origin is allowed. Now, why does this work? How does this work? What is the key difference between the normal one and this null origin? This is what we will be discussing when we